Today, we're going to talk about how to naturally improve your eyesight and eliminate the need for these right here. If you're like me and have spent countless years sitting in front of a computer screen, chances are you're wearing glasses right now. But the good news is, the information I'm about to share could make you very happy because there's a strong possibility you may no longer need them. And this isn't just about poor vision. I'll also cover several other common eye problems, including increased eye pressure, dry or irritated eyes, and lens issues such as cataracts. There are powerful natural remedies for all of these conditions. We'll go through each of them step by step. To begin, let's start with where the real issue originates: the cones in your eyes. To understand that, I'll need to briefly explain some anatomy. You might remember learning about rods and cones in school. These are tiny receptors inside your eyes that capture light, and we convert it into signals your brain can interpret as vision. Eye cones are mainly responsible for color, sharp detail, and daylight vision, while rods handle peripheral and night vision, as well as shades of gray. In simple terms, the cornea, the dome-shaped front part of the eye, helps focus incoming light. The light then passes through the lens, which is controlled by two small muscles. These muscles adjust the thickness and shape of the lens, allowing your eyes to focus on objects both near and far. This process is known as the accommodation reflex. Ideally the lens should remain flexible, but as we age, it tends to become stiffer, which affects our ability to focus properly. As light continues through the eye, it reaches the back portion known as the retina, which lines the entire inner surface of the eyeball like wallpaper. The retina connects to the eye, which carries visual information directly into the brain, essentially making the retina an extension of your brain. Most of the incoming light is focused on a small region of the retina called the macula. At the very center of the macula lies an even smaller point called the fovea, roughly the size of a grain of sand. This is where the eye's concentration of cones is the highest, providing you with the sharpest and most detailed vision possible. What makes this especially important is that there's something truly unique about the cones in your eyes, something that helps explain many of the vision problems people experience as they age. The special thing about these photoreceptors is this: cones contain the highest concentration of mitochondria in the entire retina. When we're young, these cells are packed with mitochondria, giving them incredible energy and density. But as we get older, we gradually lose these mitochondria, and that's when problems begin. Our ability to see fine details starts to fade, colors appear duller, and we start depending on glasses to see clearly, even in daylight and especially at night. If you examine all the major factors that contribute to poor eyesight, this one stands out above the rest: a massive decline of mitochondria in the back of the retina, the very area responsible for sharp and detailed vision. By the time someone reaches around 60, and for context, I'm 60 myself, they typically need about 3 times more light to see as clearly as a 20-year-old. Why? Because vision requires a tremendous amount of ATP energy produced by those mitochondria. There are a few distinct stages in this decline. The first is called contrast sensitivity, your brain's ability to distinguish between different levels of light intensity. When this starts to weaken, you find yourself straining to see at night or in dim environments. That difficulty recognizing subtle contrasts is often the earliest sign of mitochondrial decline in the eyes. The second stage of visual decline is that even during the day, you start needing more light to see clearly. Tasks that once felt effortless, like reading in dim lighting, now require ... you to turn on a bright lamp just to make out the words. The third change is increased glare at night. Lights begin to scatter more, everything looks hazy or foggy, and driving in rain or fog becomes uncomfortable and even dangerous because your eyes can't process the contrast effectively. The fourth issue often involves the macula, leading to what's known as age-related macular degeneration. This occurs when mitochondria in that central area of the retina begin to die off. As that happens, your ability to see fine details diminishes, and glasses become essential for everyday tasks. But that's not the only problem that can develop, but the lens of the eye can also become cloudy, a condition known as cataracts. We'll talk about what can be done to support that in just a moment. Another common issue arises from long periods of screen time. When you spend hours staring at a computer screen that's 2 or 3 feet away, your eyes become locked in that focal distance. Then when you look up or try to focus on something farther away, everything appears blurry for a few moments. There's also glaucoma, a condition where pressure builds up inside the eye. This increased pressure can damage the optic nerve over time if not managed properly. Before getting into what you can do about these problems, it's important to mention type R diabetes because the eyes are especially vulnerable to blood sugar damage. This is why many diabetics develop retinopathy, a disease that affects the retina and is one of the leading causes of blindness worldwide. Elevated sugar levels damage the tiny blood vessels in the eyes and even affect the lens, contributing to cataract formation. And before we move on to solutions, I want to highlight an incredible, lesser-known book that dives deeper into this fascinating connection. I believe this book is only available on Kindle. It's written by Dr. Harold Shell, who discovered that high doses of vitamin D may actually help reverse glaucoma, but only when blood levels reach around E/Chang-Mil. Now that might sound extremely high to some people, but in his book, he explains exactly how to do it safely and correctly. He also discusses several other eye-related conditions that can potentially improve with optimized vitamin D levels. It's a fascinating read, and I'll include a link to that book below. Let's talk about what you can actually do to help restore and protect your eyesight. One of the most promising approaches is red light therapy. But it's important to understand there's a right way to use it and a wrong way, and I'll explain both. There's been a surge of new research on this topic showing that red light exposure to the retina can significantly benefit eye health. Why red light? Because it helps boost mitochondrial efficiency and even repair damage within those mitochondria. Studies show that the most effective wavelength is around Lou-Bite-Tierce nanometers, which helps the mitochondria function at their best. And what's amazing is how simple this therapy can be. You only need to do it for 3 minutes in the morning, once a week, since the positive effects can last up to 7 days. However, the challenge is that there are many red light devices on the market right now, and not all of them are reliable. Some don't use the correct wavelength, and others vary in power or quality since they're not tightly regulated. So how can you stay safe and still get the benefits? The first recommendation is simple. Always keep your eyes closed while using red light therapy. This ensures safety while still allowing the beneficial wavelengths to reach your retina. All right, so the key point here is simple. Keep your eyes closed during red light therapy. Even though some sources claim it's completely safe with eyes open, it's better to stay cautious. Infrared light can easily penetrate through your eyelids, so closing them offers an added layer of protection. I'll include links below for a few recommended devices that meet IEC ILIC 1 Arsen Sibai Chisar E exempt. or RGE, low-risk standards, meaning they're safe for this type of use. I'll also share a couple of other options that don't carry this specific certification, but are designed for infants and use a single low-power bulb tuned to the correct wavelength. These are inexpensive, usually around Wu to $5, and should be quite safe, especially when you use them with your eyes closed. This technology is known as photobiomodulation, and it's an area of research that's expanding rapidly. It's exciting because it shows potential to restore mitochondrial health, particularly in the cones of your retina, the very cells that drive your detailed vision. Now, if your goal is to increase the number and strength of mitochondria throughout your body, there are definitely ways to do that. The first is regular exercise, long walks, hikes, or any activity that gets your body oxygenated. Really, any kind of consistent movement is better than none. The second is intermittent fasting. We know that conditions like diabetes damage mitochondria and, in turn, harm your vision. Fasting helps the body clear out damaged cells and encourages the growth of new, healthy mitochondria. So what's the opposite of diabetes? Maintaining low blood sugar and running your body primarily on ketones. That's why a low-carb, ketogenic diet combined with intermittent fasting and adequate sleep can make such a difference for both metabolic and eye health. The third factor involves how we use our eyes. Most people today spend hours staring at screens, focusing on objects just a few feet away. That constant near focus keeps the eye muscles in a contracted state, which reduces flexibility and makes it harder to focus on distant objects later. To counter this, you need to spend time outdoors at least 2 hours a day, looking at things far away. Indoors, your eyes don't get that distance variation, so it's important to look beyond your immediate surroundings. But here's the mistake many people make. They go for a walk, but they're still looking down at their phones. The goal is to actually engage your vision with the environment, focus on a tree branch, a leaf, a bird, or even a dog in the distance. Keep shifting your focus outward and let your eyes adjust naturally. That's how you retrain your vision and relax your eye muscles for healthier focus and clarity. Spending time refocusing your eyes at different distances can be incredibly therapeutic for undoing that constant near vision contraction. Try looking at something about Arcer's feet away, then shift your gaze to a cloud in the distance and focus on it for a few seconds. This simple habit helps relax your eye muscles and restore their flexibility. Now let's move on to point number 4. There's a genetic issue that some people have, which makes it difficult to convert beta-carotene into vitamin A. This directly affects vision because one of the main symptoms of vitamin A deficiency is night blindness. Your eyes depend on vitamin A, so it's essential to get enough of it from your diet. Some of the best sources include egg yolks, liver, cod liver oil, and butter. However, there's another important factor to consider: absorption. If your liver isn't functioning properly, for example, if you have fatty liver, cirrhosis, or if you've had your gallbladder removed, your body might not be able to absorb vitamin A efficiently. The same issue can occur if you have gallstones, gallbladder inflammation, or digestive tract problems. So even if you're consuming enough vitamin A, poor absorption can still lead to deficiency. Now on to point number 5, lutein and zeaxanthin. These two powerful nutrients are essential for maintaining healthy vision. They help you see more clearly, protect your eyes from oxidative stress, and shield your retina from UV damage. You can find them in kale, pistachios, and Swiss chard. While kale and Swiss chard contain higher overall amounts, The bioavailability, how well your body can absorb them, is actually greater in egg yolks. So even though the quantity might be smaller, you get more usable nutrients from eggs than from those plant sources. Next, let's talk about point number 6, eye floaters. Floaters appear when damaged proteins begin to drift around inside the eyeball. One of the best ways to help your body clear them out is by activating a process called autophagy, the body's natural cleanup and repair mechanism. The simplest way to trigger autophagy is through intermittent fasting, gradually extending your fasting windows over time. This encourages the body to recycle damaged cells and proteins, supporting overall eye health in the process. For fasting, you can start by going Si Shabbat hours, then wait a couple of weeks and try Tzi Shirar hours. When you begin doing these prolonged fasts, your body enters a powerful recycling mode, clearing out damaged proteins and cellular waste. That's when those eye floaters often begin to fade away naturally. Now, let's move on to point number 7, which is glaucoma. I mentioned this earlier when talking about Dr. Harold Schell. I'll include a link to his book below. In his findings, he recommends taking higher doses of vitamin D10, along with vitamin Kr and magnesium, to help reduce intraocular pressure and improve glaucoma symptoms, and he's seen remarkable results with this approach. Additionally, research also points to the potential benefits of niacin for supporting overall eye health. Next, let's talk about cataracts, a condition often linked to high sugar consumption, especially hidden sugars like starches. As you clean up your diet, cut out processed foods, and practice intermittent fasting, there's one natural remedy that stands out for cataracts in both humans and animals: NAC, or N-acetylcarnosine. This compound is available in eye drop form and is applied to the cornea, where it gets absorbed directly into the lens. Once there, it helps break down and dissolve glycated proteins, the very substances that cause cloudiness in cataracts. Many people find it highly effective in supporting clearer vision. Of course, results vary depending on the stage of the cataract, so there's no absolute guarantee, but considering how affordable and safe it is, it's definitely worth trying. There are also other nutrients that may help prevent cataracts, such as maintaining a low-carb diet and incorporating benfotiamine and carnosine. Red meat is naturally rich in carnosine, so including it in your diet can be beneficial as well. Lastly, saffron is another incredible natural compound, particularly for age-related macular degeneration. Studies have shown that saffron can enhance visual function and protect the retina, making it an excellent addition to your eye health regimen. If you're over the age of wuzzers, get yourself a reading light. While you're working on all these long-term improvements, this is something that can help you see better almost instantly. The light I recommend is a high CCT warm light LED, ideally between sans-hand C10 Kelvin. Just search for that spec and make sure the light is directed toward the surface, the page. Your reading or your computer screen, not toward your eyes. This simple adjustment enhances visibility and reduces eye strain dramatically. Now number E is a sunlight hack, and it's one of the most powerful natural tools for your vision and your overall health. Try to watch the sunrise or sunset, not by staring directly at the sun, but by looking around it and allowing those natural rays to enter your eyes gently. What this does is help reset your circadian rhythm, making it easier for your body to regulate sleep and wake cycles. It also boosts intracellular melatonin production, which doesn't just help you sleep, it's also a potent antioxidant that supports cellular repair and eye health. This is incredible. Number sure is what I call the desk reset, and it's based on the ers rule. If you're sitting at your desk for long hours, like I often died, and when doing research, you need to give your eyes regular breaks. Here's how it works. Every Arcer's minutes, look at something Ar's feet away for Arcer's seconds. Ideally, go outside if you can. During this time, blink every 5 seconds, intentionally and completely. Why? Because when you're staring at a screen, you naturally blink less and often not fully. This causes your eyes to dry out, leading to discomfort, fatigue, and that burning sensation so many people experience after hours at the computer. This brings us to number sure san, which is dry eye, a common issue that's made worse by too much screen time. But dryness can also result from vitamin A deficiency or even problems with the autonomic nervous system. When you're deficient in vitamin BE, the autonomic nervous system struggles to function properly, and that includes regulating tear production. So supporting your BEIN vitamin A intake can make a major difference in improving dry eyes naturally. And this system controls the smooth muscles that manage your glands, in this case, your tear ducts. When it's not working properly, you'll produce fewer tears, causing your eyes to dry out. The solution is vitamin BE. However, it's also important to address the underlying reason for your BE deficiency. High carbohydrate intake, type E diabetes, or drinking too much coffee or tea can all deplete BE levels. The final thing I want to touch on is advanced glycation end products, also known as AGEs. These form when sugar binds to protein, something that happens frequently when consuming processed and junk foods. Fortunately, there are ways to reverse this. Following a low-carb diet and practicing intermittent fasting can help reduce AGEs. Another helpful is alpha-lipoic acid, which lowers AGE accumulation. This approach can be especially beneficial if you're experiencing advanced vision issues, a stiff lens, or diabetic-related complications in the eyes or elsewhere in the body. Exercise also plays a huge role, along with polyphenols found in certain herbs like turmeric, resveratrol, and even dark chocolate. But perhaps the single most powerful nutrient for eye health and overall protection is vitamin D. It's one of the strongest natural anti-inflammatories and helps break down these damaging compounds. Always remember to pair vitamin D with magnesium. And if you really want to understand what vitamin D actually does inside your body, not just how it relates to disease, there's a fascinating video I'd love for you to watch next. It's right here. Check it out.